Hello everybody, today we are going to discuss The Enemy by Pearl S. Buck. So you must remember the names of these writers because especially in Flamingo, because they can be asked in your exams. And the theme here, the theme of this story is, as you can see, humanity stands above enmity. Humanity stands above everything. So that is the basic theme of this story, and it is about a prisoner of war who actually comes up in front of the house of Dr. Sadao. So Dr. Sadao and his wife Hana, these are the two main characters here. And along with that, of course, as I mentioned, the prisoner, he too is a main character, and we have a general. So these are the four main characters, and apart from these characters, we have some minor characters like the cook and the gardener. And this story is written in the background of that Second World War. And in that Second World War, you know what happened. The two major cities of Japan, that is Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were totally destroyed by the Americans. And as a result, there grew that enmity between Japan and America, and still that thing is there. And after that, it is said that Japanese never allowed Americans even to sell a needle in Japan. It is said so. So Japanese are said to be that much patriotic. And so each country actually have certain characteristic features. Like India is said to be tolerant, the Germans are said to be professionals. Similarly, Japanese are said to be very, very patriotic and nationalistic. So that idea has also been incorporated here, and all this is being narrated through these main four characters in the story. And how it begins with the description of Sadao's house. As you can see right in the beginning, it is about that. So Dr. Sadao Hoki, so these people, as I said, Sadao Hoki, his wife Hana Hoki. So Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot on Japanese coast, where as a child he played. And it was it was a square stone house, well set above a rock, or set upon a rock, well set above the narrow beach, which was outlined by pine trees, bent pine trees. Actually, the house was a low square stone house, and it was on a rock and outlined by the pine trees, and Sadao would climb on those pine trees supported by his bare feet, as he had seen people climb for coconuts in the southern seas. So similarly, he would also, this was kind of sport for him, a game for him. And his father would take him to the islands there, and he would never fail to say, he had never failed to say what? That those islands yonder means over there or that. So those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones for the future of Japan. And Sadao would ask, where shall we step from them? And his father would say that, who knows? Who can limit our future? It will be what we make of it. So that's what he would say. Perhaps he intended that those islands could be instrumental in the economic and imperialistic growth of Japan. So just one after the other, they could increase their empire or extend their empire or so. That was perhaps his father meant. Now, Sadao had taken that into his mind, just as he had taken everything his father said. Means, his father was always serious, and he would take all his statements to be very much serious, and he would keep that in his mind and heart. His father, who was a very serious natured person, means who never joked or played with him, unlike the other fathers, and but he paid infinite pains upon his studies, upon him. So of course he worked very hard for the boy, for his son, and his education was his prime concern. Sadao knew that his father was quite concerned about his education, and so what he did, his father sent him to America at the age of 22 to learn whatever there was to learn about medicine and surgery. His father wanted him to be a doctor, and so he sent him to America to learn about all that. He returned at the age of 30, and his father saw him becoming famous not only as a surgeon but also as a scientist. I must tell you here that this chapter is the longest chapter of your course, but see, I won't just go through all the boring things or say all those things all the descriptions which are given in this chapter. I won't bore you definitely. I'll try to just extract those things which are important from the point of view of your exam, and we'll discuss those things here. The reason behind this chapter being long is it has been presented in a very descriptive manner. Every scene has been described in detail, so we don't need that much description. So whatever is required for us in view of your exam, so we'll definitely discuss those things. Otherwise, we'll just move very cursorily through the portions which are not that important. So that is what we are going to do here. Now here comes an important part, and that is because he was perfecting a discovery which would render once entirely clean. So that's why he was not sent along with the troops, and moreover, the general was in a danger, in a slight danger, and he could need an operation any time, and that's why he was kept in Japan. So we have a question on this, and that is why was Sadao not sent along with the troops? Why was Sadao not sent along with the troops? So the reason is simple. One, he was perfecting a discovery. That means he was making some invention or something like that. And with the help of that, the wounds would be totally clean. And the other thing was the general could need an operation any time. And so who would operate him or who would help him at that moment? So that was the reason. Now here it's a scene that clouds are just circling around, they are rolling around, and they would cover the whole scene, and soon they would cover Sadao's house as well. So all that has been mentioned, and then here it is Hana, and Hana was wearing a kimono, and over that a blue woolen haori. So what is this haori? So this haori is actually what? This is a kind of outer dress, a coat-like knee-length dress, which you might have seen. Kimono is the gown-like dress that you might have noticed that Japanese usually wear, and over that kimono they wear just an outer garment, an outer covering, a coat-like thing. So that outer covering or that outer garment is called what? Haori. So a blue woolen haori she was wearing. And then what happened? The door opened, and who it was? Of course, Sadao. She went up to him and just put her arms through his, looked at him, smiled, and said nothing. Now Sadao goes in flashback. He just remembers that when he met Hana and all that. So he remembers about all those things. And actually, when he saw Hana, it was not that he just at once fell in love with her. He waited to fall in love with her until he was sure that she was Japanese. And what was the reason behind that? Means he had decided that he would fall in love if she was a Japanese and otherwise not. The reason was his father would not accept her if she would not be pure in her race. So it was a matter of, we can say, caste and that say race and all, and that was important in view of his father, and he could not go against his father. So he waited, and when he was sure, then it was okay, all fine. So he is now thinking that whom he would have married if he hadn't met Hannah, what would happen, and how he had met Hannah at that American professor's house, all by chance. Yes, literally by chance. It was a chance meeting. So he is thinking about all that. The American professor and his wife, the professor was Professor Harley, and I have mentioned the name here. You can see this. So the professor was Professor Harley. He and his wife were very kind people and always anxious to do something for their foreign friends, foreign students, that they wanted to do something for them. And they were so kind, too kind, that their kindness often bored their students. The students would be really fed up by their kindness. Now, and Sadao says how he would not have gone to Professor Harley's house. Why? Because the room so small, the food so bad, and his wife so voluble, so talkative. It's always like just blabbering something and like that. So he didn't want to go there, but he went. Somehow he went. And when he went there, he saw Hannah, and then the rest is the story. We know that what happened. Yes, they married later. So this is how happened. And there in the veranda when they stood, he could feel the pleasure her presence gave him. Though it had been some years to have two children, yes, they had two children, it had been some years after their marriage, and still the love was there. That's what he is trying to say, that he could feel the warmth and pleasure that she gave him. So what does he mean by this is that the love was still there, that warmth was still there. That's what he is trying to say here, because they hadn't married so heedlessly in America. It wasn't a careless marriage that just an infatuation of a time or so. It was not that. It was that real and deep love. They loved each other very much, and that's how it all happened. So, and after that, she met his father, and then their marriage was done or performed in the completely traditional Japanese manner, because the father would not allow anything else. He was that nationalist and conservative person, followed all the traditions and those rituals. So all that was to be done in the Japanese manner. And now what they had arranged, though Sadao and Hannah had arranged everything beforehand. And now they were perfectly happy in their marriage, and let them be happy. We have a certain question here. Let us discuss that. And what is that? Why would Sadao have not gone to Professor Harley's house? So why would Sadao have not gone to Professor Harley's house? Kyun? Answer is very much clear, that this the small rooms, then what, the food so bad, and his wife so voluble. So the answer is very much clear, that the reason was the room so small, the food so bad, and his wife so voluble, so talkative. So that is the reason. Now they were standing in the veranda, and suddenly what happened? They saw a black figure coming out of the sea. They saw the hands and just moving in that mist, and it was as if flung out, someone or something has been flung out of the sea, flung by a breaker. Breaker means a strong wave. They saw his hands moving in the air, then the mist hid him again. And Hannah said, "Who is he?" And then they saw him again crawling on his hands and knees, and then he fell on his face. And Sadao answered, "A fisherman perhaps washed from his boat, perhaps so." And then Sadao rushed. Hana followed him, her wide sleeves of kimono swaying, that it has those wide sleeves and they're swaying in the air. There is there. Now on one side, each side of that place, 1 mile, there were fishing villages. But the side from where he had come, there was that bare coast, and the sea was spiked with dangerous rocks. Yes, there were dangerous spiky rocks. And so he said, this man, because from the direction he had come, he could guess that this man must be badly torn, means he must be badly wounded. And it was so, because when they reached there, they saw that one side of him, the sand, actually it had that red soaking, it was all red with blood. And his clothes were in rags, were tattered clothes, and they were knotted rags. And Sadao then turned him. And when he turned him, what happened? The cave fell apart, and they saw his face. And yes, they said, a white man. Yes, a white man. The man was unconscious. He didn't know what they were doing to him. His hair were yellow hair. His hair was yellow hair, and so long as if had not been cut for weeks. Yellow beard, and he looked definitely American, foreign. And Sadao then remembered the wound, and he started searching for it. And at his touch, the blood began to flow freshly. Actually, he had been shot on the right side of lower back. The flesh was black with gunpowder. He had been shot some time back and had not been tended. It means not been taken care of. The gunshot was there, the flesh was black with gunpowder, and it was very much obvious that he had not been taken care of after that. And Hana, that, oh, how he is bleeding, seeing all that. And Sadao said, what shall we do with him? And then, though his mind, means he said that what shall we do? But his hands, his trained hands, seemed to be doing something of their own accord to stanch that fearful bleeding. What they could do to stanch. Stanch means to stop that fearful bleeding. And what he did, he packed the wound with the moss strewed on the beach. Strewed means scattered, and the man mourned in his stupor. Stupor means unconsciousness. He was mourning and whimpering and whining. He was doing that. And Sadao said the best thing would be to put him back into the sea. And Hana agreed, yes, that would be best. Now, why did they say so? What was the reason of saying so? They said that if we sheltered this man in our home, we should be arrested, we should be put into prison. And if we handed this man over to the police, he will surely die. So then the best thing was to send him back from where he had come. That means to put him into the sea. So that was the reason. And here we have a question. And what is that? What was the dilemma for Sadao and Hana in carrying the prisoner home. So what was the dilemma? What was the confusion? Now see, this word is pronounced as dilemma and dilemma both, and the meaning is same. The difference is of just American and British pronunciation, and that is sort of case 22 state a confusion. So what was that? I just told you that if they carried or if they sheltered him in their home, they should be put into prison, because that would be treason, that would be deceiving their own country. And on the other hand, if they handed him over to the police, he would surely die. So if he had to die, then better let him die there at the beach itself. That's why. Now what Hannah was looking at, and while she was looking at him, there was a look of curious repulsion, and hateful feeling or so for him. And she said, what is he? Now, what does that mean actually when we ask about someone's profession? That what does he do or something? So we ask in this way, what is he? And Sadao said, a sailor perhaps. He took his battered means threadbare, worn out cap, and there is something about him that looks American, because as they had already said, white man. So there's something like that. And he guessed from the cap, because there was a faint lettering on that, and that was U.S. Navy. And because of that, he guessed, or he concluded that he was an American prisoner of war. Yes, that's how they concluded, and they said he must have escaped, and that's why he was shot on his back. So they concluded from the situation, and this was the conclusion. And so we have a question on this, that how did Sadao come to know about the prisoner's identity? So how did Sadao come to know about the prisoner's identity? So it was through the cape. He saw that US Navy written on that, and he guessed that it must be like that. So now what they decided, they are discussing, are we able to put him back into the sea? So Sadao said that if I am, are you? Now of course Hannah was not willing. It was like murdering. It was like murdering a person. One who was dying, putting him back into the sea was definitely a murder. So she was not at all willing, and she perhaps didn't have the courage. And of course Sadao, he too didn't have that courage, and he said, Hannah said, if you can do that alone. Now Sadao said, see, if the man were whole, definitely I would have handed him over to the police. He is my enemy, and all Americans are my enemies. But see his face, how foolish he looks. So it means, then Hannah said, then you cannot put him back into the sea as well. One, you cannot put him, hand him over to the police, and you cannot put him back into the sea. Then the only thing is, what? Let's carry him to our house. That's what they decided. That's what the conclusion they reached. Then Sadao was doubtful about the servants. He said, then the servants. So Hannah said, we'll tell them that we only intend to bring him to senses, and then we'll hand him over to the police. Okay, done. So finally this man was carried. He was so light as a fowl with just that feather and skeleton. He was as light as if a fowl has been starved for days, so light. And then he was carried through their garden, through the passage into their house, and there they took him into Sadao's father's room and laid him on the floor. So in his father's room, everything to the core was Japanese, no foreign chair or table or any such furniture, because his father didn't like anything like that. And okay, Hana, what she did, she went to a cupboard partition, a cupboard there, and slit the partition and took out a quilt. Now the quilt was very beautiful, all silky, and even the that cover was pure white silk. Now she actually was not willing at all to use that quilt because it was so silky, and the man, she said, so dirty. So it definitely, how to use it? So Sadao said, yes, the man, he must be washed first. And you bring some hot water, he said, you bring some hot water, you fetch, and I'll do that. I'll do washing. So he said, I cannot bear for you to touch this man. Of course, she couldn't tolerate that. She couldn't, that Sadao doing all that. She said, I'll tell Yumi, and she can leave the children for a while and can do this. Yumi was the nurse there, and she was there to take care of the children. So she said, I'll tell Yumi, and so, okay, Sadao agreed, as you wish. You tell Yumi, I'll tell the others. But before leaving, he thought of checking the pulse, that whether he was alive or not, that all that worth doing or not. So yes, the pulse was there. And then Hana said, what? Don't try to save him. What if he should live? Sadao said, what if he should die? So Hana, you mean, actually, Hana was afraid that if he lived, then what would happen? So Sadao said he could die as well. Now Hana couldn't believe that. See, we have discussed all these things, and here now we are on wounded white man bleeding. These things we are talking of. Now what? Hana was doubtful about that because Hana couldn't believe that Sadao operating a man and he would die. Not possible. She had so much faith in his abilities as a doctor, perhaps. And Sadao said, at any cost, something must be done, and first he must be watched. And saying this, he left the room. Hana alone was there, and she then thought of the Americans she knew there in America. And it seemed as if this man had nothing to do with all those Americans she knew there in America. Perhaps no relation, nothing like that. All different from all those Americans she knew there. Here he was her enemy, a menace, living or dead. Now, what does this mean is quite important for us, and we must know and discuss this. So, here he was her enemy, a menace, living or dead. Explain. So how do you explain this, that he was a menace, a threat? How? Living or dead in both cases. So if he lived, he could harm them, being their enemy. And if he died and the matter came to light, they could be arrested on charges of sedition, that is treason. So in either way, he was a threat to them, and that's why she thought so. Now what happened? Sadao had already gone. She went to Yumi, and what the babies saw, the children saw her, and then she had to go in and then play with the babies, play with the children, smile at them. and even that the younger one, just 3 months old, she had to take her in her arms, and over the baby's shoulders she said to Yumi, "What, Yumi, come with me." So Yumi said, "The baby is ready to sleep. Let me put the baby to sleep." And then she put the baby, she arranged the pillows there and put the baby between them, and then followed her out into the kitchen. Now, there, Sadao had already told the gardener and the cook about the that prisoner, and the gardener, what he did actually, that he pulled up the few hair on his upper lip. Now this is to show the frustration that he didn't like that at all. So he pulled the few, already only few were there, and he pulled those even up. It's about the mustache, that's the writer talking of. So to show the frustration. Now what he was saying, that our master ought not to save this man. Okay. First, the bullet. First, the gun tried to kill him, okay, hit him. And then the sea caught him and wounded him by its rocks. So now, if our master tries to save him, then what the gun did and what the sea did would take revenge on us. So that's what he believed. So he was a bit superstitious, we can say. And we have a question on this as well. And the question is, what logic did the gardener offer not to save the prisoner? So what logic did he extend, and how logical it was? It was simply a superstition. And Hannah said, okay, I'll tell you, master. Okay. She too was afraid, but she was not that superstitious. And she was thinking that, could it be well to help an enemy, to save an enemy? She was thinking like that. And all this actually was going on. Now, as she has instructed, Yumi brought hot water in a bucket. But when she saw who that person was, her thick lips twitched in stubbornness. She got annoyed at that when she saw the person who it was. She said, "A white man? She said, I have never washed a white man, and I won't wash so dirty a man now." Now, Hannah got angry at that. Hannah said, "You'll do what your master commands of you." Means you'll have to follow the orders of your master. So there was such a fierce look in Yumi's eyes that Hannah got afraid. And actually it was not exactly the look. The reason was, if the servants went out and reported the matter wrongly, then what would happen to them? That was the fear. And she tried to make her understand, make her clear about this, that, see, we only want to bring him to senses and then we'll hand him over to the police. But Yumi said, "See, I'm a simple person and I have nothing to do with this." Then what could Hannah do? She simply said, "Okay, then retire to your work, return to your work." She simply allowed her to go. But then she got really very angry at Yumi and annoyed at Yumi. And she was muttering and murmuring, that stupid Yumi, that why couldn't she do this? It was just a wounded, helpless man. So why couldn't she wash him also? She was muttering like that. Now what? In her anger and stubbornness, Hannah herself, see, earlier Hannah was not willing to stay there in the room with that prisoner, but now in her anger, and after all, in anger and stubbornness one can do anything, and so she did that herself. What? the water and the rags that Yumi had brought. With those, she started washing the upper body of that person. So first, what she did, she untied those knotted rags, and then she started washing. And when she was cleaning him, she felt that his skin was of fine texture, and he must have been blonde when young. So blonde, is the complexion of the foreigners. That palish white complexion is called blonde. So this is what she felt about him, and she had to do that herself. Now, here what happened, that Sadao, actually, though she thought about this all, but she definitely didn't like him at all. And while doing, she didn't dare actually to turn the body. She didn't have the courage to turn the body. And now the anger was ebbing. Ebbing means declining, going down. She got up and wiped her hands on the wrong towel and covered him. Wrong towel means the towel with which she might have just cleaned his body. And lest the man be chilled, she covered him with the quilt. Means unless out of, because he had been in the sea and all. So to avoid any such thing that he would catch pneumonia or something like that, or cold or something like that. To avoid any such thing, she just covered him with the quilt. And she just remembered Sadao, and at the very moment Sadao entered, and he was wearing that surgeon's emergency coat, and he was carrying that surgeon's emergency kit. So you can see here kit and all that. And he asked Hannah, what? Fetch more towels. Okay, Hannah followed obediently, and when she went to fetch more towels, she remembered what? The gardener used to cover the plants with old pieces of matting to protect them from the cold winds during night. So during nights there would be cold winds, and to protect those plants from those cold winds, what he would do, he would cover the plants with the old pieces of matting. So she also remembered that, and she went to bring those pieces of matting. The idea was to avoid the matting get spoiled with the blood, because he would operate and then there would be bleeding. So to avoid all that ruin of matting there, she thought of bringing those pieces of rags and matting. But the time when she returned, the blood had already seeped through the packing and the matting, and it was all spoiled. So Hannah said, "Oh, the matting." He said, "Yes, it's ruined. Now help me to turn him over." And Hannah did. She followed. Now Hannah started complaining about Yumi. Hannah said, "What? Yumi would not wash him." So he said, then you washed him?" She said, "Yes." But now Sadhao was not listening to her, and she was used to his absorption. Actually, whenever he would be indulged or involved in the work, then he would be like cut off from the rest of the world. It would be like that. So she was used to it, and she wondered whether it mattered to him what the body was, until the work went on excellently. So actually with Sadao, the case was, it would not matter to him that who the person before him was, whether friend or enemy. The only important thing for him was what? That the operation or the thing must go on well. So it didn't matter that he was serving or he was operating an enemy. Now he told her, "What? You'll have to give anesthetic." She said, "I? But never have I." Means she had never did any such thing. He said, "It's easy enough, simple enough." Now you can see in the picture in the book what? That Sadao has a surgeon's emergency light on his forehead. And see, here, so he had that surgeon's emergency light on his forehead, and with that he was just peeping into the wound, and he was saying that if the wound had not been deep, I could get the bullet out. He had lost much blood. And Hannah couldn't see all that blood before her, and she had never seen before that actually. And her face was color of sulfur, that, palish brown and all that. And he said, don't faint, sharply to Hannah. He said, don't faint, because if I stop now, he would die. He would permanently stop. And then Hannah, what she did, she just covered her face and ran out, rushed out, and Sadao could hear her retching, that is, vomiting. He had forgotten actually, Hannah had never seen an operation before this. And he felt really quite annoyed and angry at the man who was lying there under his knife, because it was because of that man that Sadao was unable to go and help his wife when she needed his presence. Really, it made him really quite annoyed and angry at that person. Now, we have an important question here. It's really quite important once it has been asked in your exam. And the other reason is it's not easy to catch the thing here. And what if I write the question, you will understand why I'm saying so, that which was the only incident when Sadao spoke sharply to Hannah. So actually the thing is, it's not easy to remember in such a long chapter unless it is specially pointed out. And that is the reason I am pointing it out here, that you must remember once it has been asked, which was the only incident. And now you know this very well, that when Hannah saw all that blood and operation going on before her eyes, she had never seen that. Her face was the color of sulfur at that time, and then she rushed out. So at that time, he had to see that if Sadao left that prisoner and just attended Hannah, then perhaps the man would die. So that was the moment when Sadao spoke sharply to Hannah. That is what, and you now remember this thing. You must remember now this thing. Now what happened, that Sadao, in his anger, he said that there is no reason under heaven that why you should live. There's no reason under heaven that why this man should live. And the man actually was mourning and just whining in his unconscious state, in his stupor. And Sadao said that, I don't know. It's not that my pleasure, that it's not for my pleasure that I am saving your life when I am trying to operate you. In fact, I don't know why I'm doing this all. He said, actually the man was groaning. And Sadao in his anger said, groan if you like, groan, that I'm not doing this for my pleasure. In fact, I don't know why I'm doing this. So that was the reaction. And then what happened? Hannah returned. And Sadao motioned with his chin. Actually, he was pointing out to that anesthetic. So he said, it's good that you have returned, because the man is beginning to stir. That means he was coming to his senses. He was coming out of that unconsciousness. So Hannah said, but how shall I do it? He said, simple, that saturate the cotton and bring it close to his nostrils. But see, when he breathes heavily, just take it away, otherwise he will go away. That's what he was trying to say actually. And then, Hannah just crouched close to him. That means she just bent upon her knees and sat beside that man, and she knew when she saw his face, she knew that the man was suffering, whether he knew it or not. His face was very thin and haggard, and she understood that the man was suffering. And then she remembered the talks about the prisoners of war. She had heard the talks or the things, the news came like flicker of rumor, word of mouth, grapevine, means like one to the other, just as the thing spread. So it came to her like that. And they heard what about talks about the prisoners being tortured and all. And she had also heard about the Japanese army. There were reports in the newspapers about the Japanese army that wherever they went after liberation, wherever they went, they were warmly welcomed and it was all celebrated. So those kinds of news were there in the newspapers. And then she also remembered General Takima. General Takima, who had won a great battle at Manchuria. And now nobody remembered that. People had forgotten about his adventure or that great battle he had won. Now they remembered only what? That he beat his wife very badly at home. Now the reason you must think, or there might be this question in your mind, that why this all is being discussed here. So the reason is, she was thinking that if that general could beat his wife so badly at home, then what would it do with that prisoner? Obviously, that Takima could do anything. That's why she was thinking all that. And then what? Hana saw a scar below his ear, on his neck. And she understood what the man was tortured. She wished actually that he should not have been, but when she saw the scar, it was clear that the man was tortured. And then she pointed this out to Sadao. Sadao, the scar. And at the very moment, what? The tip of his instrument struck against something hard. And of course, what was that? Bullet, of course. And Sadao, he said, it was somewhere near kidney. It was somewhere near kidney, and what all thoughts left him, he felt purest pleasure. And what he started probing with his fingers, he just thrust his fingers into the wound and he started probing with his fingers. And Sadao remembered his professor of anatomy. He remembered that his professor thundered year after year, his professor of anatomy thundered year after year in his classes. And what? Ignorance of human body is the surgeon's cardinal sin, sir. Cardinal, that is chief, main. And he would say that to operate is without complete knowledge of human body. Anything less than that is murder. It means he would say, if a surgeon don't know the human body, then what a surgeon he is. See, if you are to operate heart and you operate kidney, then what are you doing? You are playing with human body. You are playing with life. You don't have any right to then just do any such thing. So it is simply a murder. That's what he would say. And so here we have a question on this. So we are here, you can see, and what would Sadao's professor of anatomy say in his classes? What would he say? An answer is very much clear, that ignorance of human body is a surgeon's cardinal sin, chief or main sin. That's what he would say. Now, Sadao had a habit of talking to the patients. So while operating, he would say, my friend, and he was talking to him as well. Force of habit, actually. And he was saying that it's not near kidney, exactly, my friend. And with the cleanest and most precise of the incisions, what the bullet was out. And the man muttered some English words. What? Girds. They got my girds, something like that. And then sank into silence so profound that Sadao felt compelled. It was at once became all silent. Earlier he was muttering girds, girds, something like that, and at once all silent. So Sadao felt compelled that should check. And when he checked, yes, the pulse was there, the heart too was alive if he wanted to give him life, if he wanted to save him. And then Sadao thought, but I don't want to save him. And the very next moment, first he thought that I don't want to save him, and the very next moment, what he turned, took a vial. Vial, you know what? Vial is simply that small, that bottle that we crash and then fill the syringe. So that is called vial. And what he did, he just chose a vial and then filled the syringe, the hypodermic, and thrust it into his arm. And what first? The pulse fluttered, and then it grew stronger. And Sadao said, this man will live in spite of all. So yes, was not going to die easily. That first he was saved from the bullet. Second, then from in the sea itself, was wounded by those rocks, but he didn't die. And now, even after operation, he didn't die. He was well. So Sadao said, he's not going to die. He won't die anyway so easily.